Hey guys, today we'll be talking about whether migraine is an energy problem. Actually, let me invite the Migraine World Summit, which is happening this week. I don't know if you had a chance to. It's all about migraine, many different experts, really worth listening. And the best thing is, it's completely and entirely for free. All right.
Hello.
There's Kelly. Yay! It's so good to see you.
I'm
And
here. Thank you, Dr. Gross.
And you're joining from Scottsdale, right?
Yeah. Yes, I
Which is also a great epiphany because that's where we first met at the American Headache Society meeting that is always happening in beautiful Scottsdale. So
perfect. It's way sunnier and more right where I'm at. Very
that's great. Awesome. Good to hear and good to see you. Yeah, Kelly, do you quickly want to talk about how you joined the World Migraine Summit and about a bit about your personal migraine story?
yeah.
That would be great.
Okay, so after a brain injury in 2013, I have lived a full day with migraine attacks. It probably a couple times. I'm never really below a 6 or a 7 in pain scale. And I felt so desperate. I felt so alone. I had no, you know, a welcoming, great migraine. I really sort of felt like I was the only one, like, had this bad happen. It's also very my plug, and I also didn't know that have migraine every single day. I've heard people have migraine, and it's only every, you know.
Ellie, you're breaking up a little bit. I thought it was on my end, but
Sorry about that. Hang on, let me see if I turn Wi-Fi off.
yes, I. Is that
What about
better?
now? Are we better?
Let's hope for it. Maybe you speak for a bit more. We really want to hear your story, so it's quite a few people dropping in as well. So
Perfect. Please,
yeah,
everyone, if I'm breaking up. Oh,
still breaking up a little bit at parts. It's odd. I can see your mouse move. Your videos. There's just a sound. You're not on speaker somewhere, are you?
no, I'm just on my. Give me one.
Maybe while you're fixing your sound intro, I can quickly introduce myself. I'm Elena Gross, a neuroscientist, and I'm also an ex-chronic migraine patient, or I don't know, Kelly, if you were chronic, maybe at worse times you were as well. I had 20 plus days a month and really wasn't a life worth living at the worst part. Sometimes even I had the whole month in pain, and people that are listening now, they might understand what that feels like. And eventually I went into neuroscience. I studied psychology at first and started having migraine when I was 14, but really when I was around 24, they became chronic. And so I switched into neuroscience. I was lucky enough to have the chance and learned about more about the brain and stumbled across something that you will be maybe hearing more about tomorrow that gave me my brain back. And now I have maybe a day of migraine a month maximum. So it's crazy. I really have my life back. And what I do now when I get a migraine, I get away with like taking a medical food plus an aspirin, right? Like literally a painkiller, and that's usually okay. So it's really a 180-degree turn for me, yeah, that's why I became kind of like a pain turned passion migraine researcher. And let's see now if Kelly's sound is back. So let's try you
Okay.
again. So for me, there's still a bit of a gap sometimes. I hear a bit, and then a few words are gone.
Is it? If, let me know if it's coming across with both or.
I can kind of guess what you're saying. It's like three words that are there and three words are gone. Um,
Um, Hang on. Let me see.
that's
Let me.
better now. Now it's okay.
Okay. So maybe if I hold it there, is that better?
Oh yeah, maybe I need to go on mute when you're talking. That's actually a good idea. Let's.
Okay, let's see if that works. Is this better for people in the audience? I don't want to shake the whole time, but okay, perfect. Okay, so I am Kelly PKA, and after, I don't know how much of this you heard, and I cut off, but I had a concussion about 10 years ago. And every single day since then, I have been in a constant migraine attack. It flares a few times a day, but there's never a time that I haven't been outside of a migraine attack. I have really disabling pain every second. I have nausea. Almost every one of my activities is still really dictated by my pain levels, by my symptom levels. And I know there's so many people out there like me. And I knew that now, but I definitely didn't know that in the beginning. I had no idea that, you know, people got migraine this bad, people got concussion that bad. And the first resource that really helped me, about 8 years ago, I found the Migraine World Summit. And I've been with them since. And since then, I've been able to join their interviewing team, and I'm part of their social media team. And I think it's just one of the things I'm most proud of my life, because there's so many people and there's so many doctors out there who really want us to know all of this information. And unfortunately, so few of us will ever get to see them in real life. And so I love that we're able to bring these brilliant minds who desperately want to help people like me. And we give them opportunities to talk to them in the comments, talk to them in their expert interviews. And like today, we get to talk to you on Instagram Live. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for everything you've done for patients like me and you.
Oh, no, thank you, Kelly, and the whole Migraine World Summit team. It's so fantastic. I love that for a migraine patient, it's online, but you can also watch for free for 24 hours after. So if you're in bed and you can't take it all in, you really have the opportunity to pick out what you like a buffet, and just watch it at a later stage. And you can dim your screen and wear your blue blocking glasses or whatever you need. So it's really fantastic. And me, as being in the migraine researcher world, I do get the chance to meet these people sometimes, and I can really say that, you know, even in the international, like the top #1 headache society meetings, it's the same people. So it's really top level researchers that contribute there. So I can really only recommend sign up. It's for free. You get to pick and choose what you want. You can watch it later at your own time. You get to ask questions, right? So during the 24-hour period, you really get to ask the experts, and some of them are really quite active as well. So really give that a shot. Is there anything you want to tell about what already happened, Kelly? Anything that stood out to you?
Yes.
As you can't call favorite children, but maybe something that was particularly interesting for you?
So far we've had day one. It started at 3 p.m. yesterday. So it'll be available for about 3 more hours. So if you haven't seen the day one interviews, make sure you jump on them very quickly. There's a lot of talk about just how exciting it is to hear about exercise from doctors who actually understand what it's like to have chronic migraine, because so many of us, you know, we have daily attacks, we have daily symptoms, plus we have a real life. So when it sort of feels like we're being scolded, like we're not doing enough for our disease. And the doctors so far, Dr. Alani and Dr. Singh particularly, they talked about exercise, and they actually got it. They actually understand what it's like when, you know, you're sitting in bed, you can't move, and someone's telling you, oh, you just need to exercise more and you'll be fine. You know, that's not all of our solution. It can help, but also we need to be realistic about our own needs. So I've seen a lot of people respond to that.
And I remember exercise was one of my worst triggers, but then everybody tells you, well, you need to exercise, right? So I was forcing myself, and then a couple of hours later, for sure there would be a migraine, right? But I didn't want to make that link, because I thought exercise is healthy for everyone, and especially high intensity exercise is what I was always recommended, which as a migraine patient or sufferer really isn't the ideal thing to do, really. And that kind of links to the topic of my talk, which will be live tomorrow, like the exercise and the energy. So what basically saved my life, or my brain for sure, is the connection or the realization that migraine, or at least a part of migraine, a unique subgroup of migraine, could be as much a metabolic disease as it is a neurological disease. So as much a disease of energy, metabolism, as it is a disease of the brain, kind of. And now you might be like, what? This is the first time I'm hearing this. But if you go back a step and we think about migraine is so common. And for some of you that are joining, it can be super isolating and we think we're all on our own and nobody understands. But actually, there's a billion of us in the world that have migraine. And if you think about a billion people, that's 1 in 7 of us. Can this really be an accident of nature? Can this be some kind of a random mutation that just got passed on if that didn't have any evolutionary advantage, at least 10,000 or so years back? And if it's not primarily our genes, because the genes wouldn't be passed on, that's Darwinism, right? If they wouldn't have had any advantage, right? If it's not primarily our genes, then maybe it's our environment in combination with those genes that are making migraine that bad. Now, the great thing about this is we cannot change our genes just yet. I mean, we can start, this CRISPR-Casing and the gene scissors, and maybe in 100 years plus, we can cut out a few genes and insert a few new ones, but that's not happening today. And anybody who has migraine, that needs to be fixed. Something needs to be done today, right? We cannot waste our good years in bed. Yeah. That's not what you are here for, not what you're not following Migraine World Summit or me. You're probably not around for waiting until we can edit our genome. So if the environment is at fault to some degree, right? What can you do in your environment? An environment includes basically everything that isn't genome. That includes what you eat, that includes the air you breathe, the water you drink, that includes your friend circle, that includes your screens, the light that is emitted, that excludes your exercise regimen or your perfume or your hygiene products. Environment, your friends, your family, everything that isn't your genetic is basically the environment. And tomorrow, what we will be discussing is what can you do to change your environment in such a way that if you do have a suboptimal energy metabolism that is contributing to your migraine, to mitigate the issue. And for that, I've spent the last decade, actually, now I'm getting old, so it's already a decade that I've been researching migraine and working on this. I've made a 4-pillar model that is not that hard. Of course, you always have to tweak and personalize it to you, but there's basically 4 main pillars.
Can I interrupt?
Sorry, yes. Yes, please, Kelly.
I know a lot of us are really nervous when we hear a new theory because we've been preyed upon by so many different companies. We've been scammed out of so many things. We've heard so many cures that do nothing for us. We've lost money, we've lost days. But I want to make sure that everyone realizes just how brilliant of a researcher Dr. Gross is, and how this theory, while it's very early in its research, it's been published in Nature, which is one of the most prestigious medical journals. It's been presented at the International Headache Society conference. So there's actual weight behind this. This isn't something so ridiculous that she's just speaking on. She invented, like in her living room. There's research, there's credibility, and it's actually such a huge honor to be talking to her today. So before we go into that, I just want to make sure that people know that this very much could work. And it might not work for everyone. Obviously, we're living with migraine, but the research will continue with this, and this is legitimate.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm blushing. Wow. Well, yes. And yes, I must say, I'm not the only one believing in this any longer. There's really top experts that also support that energy theory. And you said it very nicely. Unfortunately, migraine is a very complex and very diverse disease. So I wouldn't be sitting here, I wouldn't be credible, I wouldn't be a migraine patient myself, having gone through a decade of trying everything and failing and believing that theory and then being so hopeful, taking something and it just wouldn't do anything. So I'm a patient first and a researcher second. So I understand, and it's good you say this, it won't work for everyone. Energy metabolism is not the reason or the root cause for every migraine patient, right? So there's different problems out there and it's very complex and diverse, but for quite a few people, it can really help. And it's something that doesn't have side effects. And it's something that is leading to a healthier lifestyle, potentially, that could help you ward off some other issues, chronic issues in the long run. So for me, it's always important, first, do no harm. And as a migraine patient, you probably have also taken all these other stuff like antidepressants, anticonvulsants that leave you with so many intolerable side effects. I remember back at Oxford, I was on topiramate just to survive my degree, right, the neuroscience degree. And I would be sitting there with my best friend at coffee, and I had no idea what her name was. It was so awkward. And then I was trying to order, and I would try to remember the word donut, and it just didn't come to my mind. And then I was trying to like describe donut in different, like a bagel with a hole, you know. It was it's just very strange. And I was always afraid I would fail my degree. Then the word different was gone, and now try to describe different in a different way. That just doesn't work, especially as a foreigner, you know. So I know of all the side effects. So yeah, first, do no harm. So everything that I'm talking about tomorrow is actually mostly lifestyle changes, or using human identical or bioactive substances that have no side effects unless you're allergic to something very particular. And I'm always really emphasizing really making this your own, trying what works for you. But as you said, like the Migraine World Summit gives you a whole access of information, and maybe my talk tomorrow won't be for you, but somebody else's will. And I think all the things that don't do harm are worth a try. And for me, as I said, right, I'm down to a day or less a month, and migraine really isn't controlling my life anymore. It's literally not even something I'm afraid of anymore. And that's the most grateful, I'm the most grateful for this. I didn't even think in my lifespan this would happen. So you probably, yeah, people listening know what it's like.
Definitely. All right, let's go to your 5.
Sorry, can you say that again?
All right, tell us about your 4 pillars.
Yes, the 4 pillars. So the first pillar is stabilizing blood glucose. For various reasons, your brain is very energy demanding. It needs constant energy supply at all times, and also can store energy, and it cannot really use a lot of the energy dense molecules that are big because they don't get through the blood-brain barrier that is surrounding and protecting our brain. So you need to have blood sugar stable to not get that blood sugar roller coaster, which leads to hyperglycemia, so too much blood sugar. That makes oxidative stress, so damaging free radicals that also impair your energy metabolism. And you don't want the dip either, because that hypoglycemia is when you can trigger an attack because your brain is starving. So balancing blood glucose, first one. It's many different ways and many things that are influencing blood glucose that you wouldn't even be guessing, like stress, coffee, an infection. All of these migraine triggers, exercise. So a lot of these actually tie to, a lot of these trigger factors in migraine tie to changes in blood glucose. Even alcohol leads to hypoglycemia. Hypoxia, and so on. So there's a few things. The second pillar is making sure your body and brain have enough micronutrients. We always talk about calories, but calories really aren't enough to make energy. That's something I didn't know. Literally in university, that may be one reason why eventually my migraine became chronic. I had zero time, and I was like, as long as I have enough calories, it doesn't matter where they come from. So I was basically living off Rice Krispies for months. Can you imagine? Like, I would buy like packets of Rice Krispies. That was easy fix, and I was just eating that 3 times a day, maybe 4 times. No.
On bad nausea days, you're vomiting. I'm like, whatever I possibly keep, maybe that.
Exactly. And that's usually like rice, potatoes. So if you can't get this via your diet, I think it's really essential to find a high quality product that has these bioactive compounds in there. And there's so many trace minerals, fat soluble, water soluble vitamins, antioxidants, all the stuff you need for your cells to make energy. That's essential. So that's 2. Number 3 is antioxidants. That's something that's become quite popular, so you might have heard of that. What does that actually mean? In your body, when you make energy, you always have waste, a bit like a coal factory that produces free radicals. And free radicals are these little bombs, and wherever they bomb to, things explode. And this could be your DNA, this could be your mitochondria, your powerhouses in the cells, this could be enzymes. So you're making these bombs, and you need to have bomb neutralizers. Otherwise, there's too much damage. So whenever you have enough bomb neutralizers as you have bombs, same amount, you're good. Whenever you have less bomb neutralizers than bombs, you're making damage, and then you also don't make enough energy. And you age, right? And you get migraines. So actually, every single migraine trigger factor can be linked to an increase in these bombs. So whether that is, I don't know, tell me a trigger factor, and I can tell you the link.
What about barometric pressure from the weather? That drives me wild.
Yes, so this one is speculation because that's the one where it's not 100% sure, but I have a theory as well. So if you have pressure changes in the air, it changes the oxygen concentration in the air. When you have less oxygen, you cannot make enough energy because you need oxygen for efficient energy production. And we know that, for example, altitude is one of the most reliable migraine triggers. You put even healthy people in a high altitude, they will get a headache.
Okay, all right, I can see that.
Another one?
What about lack of sleep? That one's big for me too.
Yes, so lack of sleep is a big one. If you don't have enough, what happens during sleep is actually repair and detox. So that's one thing that's I guess a bit obvious. There's more things when you sleep. So when you sleep, you get rid of toxins with your liver, you clear out damaging proteins, so you do a lot of repair, you're saving energy. And when you don't do that, you cannot make enough energy the next day as well. Because also another thing happens, your cortisol level go up. Cortisol and adrenaline if you don't have enough sleep, because you need to artificially keep the energy up. You didn't have the rest. Your energy machines in your body are struggling, your cells are struggling, you still need to function, so cortisol and adrenaline go up. Cortisol and adrenaline raise the bombs.
Okay. All right, someone asked, what about hormones?
What about too much sleep? Yes, that's another good point. Now, if you sleep too much, when you sleep, you cannot eat. So there's a couple of ways why too much sleep can also impair energy, because you don't get enough. If you don't have enough glucose reserves, and we can't store glucose very well, right? If you're dependent on glucose for your brain, you're not fat adapted, you sleep too long, you get into an energy deficiency. And the other thing, if you sleep too much and you're used to caffeine in the morning, say you have caffeine at 8 a.m. during the week all the time, but then on the weekend you sleep till 10, then you also get caffeine withdrawal, and that also causes migraine.
Okay, that makes sense. One other person in the comments asked about hormone fluctuations.
That's another big one. And that one can also be tied to metabolism, actually. So very few people know that actually one of the most potent bomb neutralizers are estrogen and progesterone. They're very potent antioxidants. So close to your period, your bomb neutralizers, your biggest bomb neutralizers, are basically plummeting entirely. So then you're left with a lot of the bombs, and then there's other things that happen. So prior to your period also, estrogen and progesterone are also determining how insulin sensitive you are. This means how well you can use your glucose and the fuel that is around. So these things together, you don't really have bomb neutralizers around, so you're very vulnerable, and you cannot use energy as well, really make you very vulnerable to a migraine attack.
That is so wild, as if we're not dealing with enough.
Yes. And men don't have that. They just have stable levels, right? So they don't get more vulnerable times in the months, which might also be why women have so much more headaches, because they just get much more vulnerable times where they are not able to catch the bombs as efficiently.
That's okay. So what do we do about this?
So there's one more pillar that we need to discuss, fourth one, and then we can also answer more questions, and either we go into what we can do about it. I mean, it's kind of in the pillars already, or we answer questions, and some of the answers also in the talk tomorrow. But the fourth one is actually a very important pillar as well. If you've done 1 to 3 and it still doesn't work, that means that your brain and your body can probably not use glucose very well as a fuel source.
Okay.
Glucose is sugar. Sugar is what I learned even at Oxford, is the primary fuel source for the brain. But it doesn't have to be. 10,000 years ago, plus, it probably even wasn't. So the interesting thing is migraineurs or migraine patients have a very energy demanding brain. It doesn't habituate. So all of you that have migraine, you have a Ferrari brain, but you might have a Volkswagen engine or a Fiat engine or whatever you have over there. I don't know what you use in it. So you have a small engine for a big and fast car currently. So in order to fix that, we need to change your engine. And glucose is that small engine that doesn't fuel a very energy demanding migraine brain. But there's another fuel source that you can use. It's called the ketone body. You can also use small fatty acids to fuel the brain, not just the glucose. And this is an alternative, more efficient fuel source. Now you know the bomb problem. When you burn those ketone bodies, you are making less bombs. And the ketone bodies are also bomb neutralizers. So it's like a win-win situation. They're anti-inflammatory, and that they can really be a very effective migraine management strategy for some. So the fourth pillar is actually adding an alternative energy source for the brain to glucose. And you can do this with a ketogenic diet, where you basically reduce your carbohydrates a lot. You can do this with exogenous sources as well, or with MCT oil, like coconut-derived fats that also can be turned into ketone bodies in your liver. Now, these are the four pillars. Now, maybe shall we ask if there's any questions from the audience before I babble on too long and everybody's bored?
Yes, please. Anyone in the audience, this is such an amazing opportunity to get to talk to one of the most brilliant minds out there. So if you have any questions, please let us know.
So I saw one that asked, how can exogenous ketones help with migraine? And it's a good question because there's many different ways. We now know they can help by being an efficient alternative or additional fuel source for the brain. They can also reduce inflammation. They can help your gut microbiome because the gut microbiome produces butyrate. And a lot of exogenous ketones can include the beta hydroxybutyrate. That's very close. So you can feed your gut, and a healthy gut can feed the brain. Your gut microbiota can make a lot of the vitamins and micronutrients for your brain to work properly. They also reduce excitability in the brain. Now, I talked about migrainous brains needing so much energy, high performance brains, right? Because they're firing all the time, they don't habituate. Reducing some of that hyperexcitability will also help save energy. And there's a couple of more ways. They increase the powerhouses in your cells so that you can make energy a bit more. They even help with glucose transport potentially. So there's many different ways how they could be helpful for some, the metabolic migraine subgroup at least.
Okay, so Natalie also on that was similar. So I tried ketogenic diet for a long time, and especially like when you're on disability, you can't afford much. It is an extremely difficult diet and extremely expensive. Are there any ways to get some of the benefits without doing the full ketogenic diet?
Yes, and I have to admit that a ketogenic diet can even be very hard. I struggled as well because in a lot of migraine patients, the liver is struggling and the liver has to make those ketone bodies. So in that case, I think what I would recommend is more like a low GI diet. You can get a lot of the benefits already with low glycemic index diet, which means that you're trying to prevent those spikes. So you get rid of all the processed foods and the sugars, and then basically you try to get a level or at least like only small waves in your blood sugar. You can do that with a patch, like a blood glucose monitor. I would really invest in that for 2 weeks and really see what foods can you eat that don't give you a spike like this and then a hypoglycemia after. So really seeing what foods keep your blood sugar fairly stable. And then you can add exogenous sources of ketone bodies if you feel that is beneficial to you. And that gives your brain another energy boost. If not, a low glycemic index is really good for many people. And that will also bring the costs down. Now, I'm going to say one more shocking thing. If it's just the cost, but a ketogenic diet feels good for you, what I've done also as like a student, might feel disgusting for US Americans. In Germany, it's more common, is really like getting the unwanted pieces of the meat, the fattier cuts, the ones that somebody doesn't like, even in organic. If I go to a farm, or the heart is a muscle. It sounds strange, but heart is delicious. It's just another muscle and you almost get it for free. Liver, organic liver, full of vitamins. That's like the nature's multivitamin. So endogenous tribes, they were usually giving the lean muscle meat to their animals, and they would eat the intestines and the organs, actually. So that's one way to really do this in a really cheap fashion, actually, if you eat unwanted pieces of the animal. And also helps the nose to tail movement, which I quite support.
Okay, what about sort of going on that and ask, are there any supplements that could help with this in a similar fashion?
Yes. So the beta-hydroxybutyrate is the ketone body that I talked about. I think that's beneficial, and that exists already in quite a few, at least in the US, you can get hold of that. And then what I really recommend is a very broad spectrum, high quality, multivitamin supplement. Really there, you need to be careful that it's the bioactive human identical versions. There's not that many brands out there that do that. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to endorse someone here. I'm not being paid by any of those products. What I personally take is Sunday Naturals, it's called. Thorne Research is another good one that is available in the US, because otherwise you're just making expensive pee. And a lot of supplements do that. They don't help you. They even block the absorption of the real stuff. And if you are sick, you don't have the energy and the enzymes to make the conversion to actually turn the vitamin or the mineral into something, especially vitamin, that the body can use. And so those are the brands I trust. And if anybody, I don't know if I'm supposed to plug this, but I also made my own for me and other patients like me. So we're launching a medical food supplement in the US as well. Medical food, not a supplement, medical food product, which contains micronutrients and ketone bodies as well, because I couldn't find something that has the combination. But I don't want to advertise that here too much. I'm going to repeat, Thorne Research is a trusted brand of mine and Sunday Naturals.
Excellent. Okay, and a couple people are asking about, they've heard that the ketogenic diet is unhealthy, and I think I kind of want to expand that. How do we know if a diet is actually working for us, if it's healthy for us? What should we look out for? What should we be reporting back to our doctors? Do you have any suggestions on that?
Yes. So I think as a migrainer, there is always a transition period where things might go worse. So they might feel bad. But if you feel bad on any diet for 4 to 6 weeks still, it's not good for you. So you have to give it some time. But if after 6 weeks you feel worse than before, you really need to stop it. Something's off, right? Some things to watch is, I guess, liver panel. If you don't want to go to a lab, what is interesting also, if you get one of those blood glucose meters, for example, if you do a diet that is stressing you a lot, your morning glucose will be higher. That's one thing you can track. So you wake up, you don't have coffee yet. First thing is you measure your glucose. If that's high, something's stressing you. That may well be your diet. So that's also in a strict ketogenic diet. I was not feeling great. And I was realizing that my morning sugar was rising, even though I wasn't eating any carbs. If that happens, that's a rise in cortisol and adrenaline. And that's something you don't want. The other thing, if you want to talk about more like food intolerances, there's another good thing to do. If you suspect that food is triggering you, you can eat that food in isolation in quite some quantity. And then you wear a watch like this, like any kind of a pulse watch, and you watch your pulse. If your pulse sitting goes up quite a bit, again, that is stress. That will harm you. And that might be an indication you're not tolerating whatever you're eating.
Okay.
So that's another hack. Otherwise, I can only just always recommend listen to your body. As a migrainer, you're probably in tune with yourself. Listen to your body. If something feels off, stop doing it. Whatever everyone else says. I was always trying to do the things that everybody else was kind of saying they're good for you, but everyone's different. And just because it works for your friend or this expert or that is now talking to you and telling you to do X, Y, Z, if it feels wrong for you, stop it, right? We're all different.
Agreed. And before trying anything, definitely talk it over with all of your healthcare providers. Make sure you're good. Make sure they're looking out for you. Make sure it's safe. But yeah, feel free to bring any learnings from this or the Migraine World Summit back to your care team and talk it over with. Okay, so
right, Kelly. I want to also say that just because it says diet, a ketogenic diet is very drastic. A diet can be very drastic, and especially if you're taking medications, always make sure you check with your healthcare provider if that's okay with the current regimen you're on and if it's safe, and don't do it alone. You're right. Thanks for the ad.
So you have been chronic. I am still chronic with migraine. What advice would you give to someone who is feeling so out of hope? They feel like they've tried everything. They feel lonely. They're isolated. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say to them, I have been where you were 10 years back, like 100%. I was like the most desperate, most in pain, isolated. My dad didn't understand what I was going through. He told me it's just a headache, man up and stop whining, kind of. So there is hope. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And it's not just people having these miracle stories. They do exist. There is hope. Migraine is too common to be, at least the common forms of migraine, it's too common to be a genetic mutation that you cannot do everything about. This is the number one message I want to give you here. Migraine genetics that you are just born with and you're stuck with for life, that's not the primary reason. You can be proud of your migraine brain. It's a fast performing brain, and once you give it everything it needs, it will perform better. Migraine is your friend. Migraine is a warning signal, the body's most important warning signal that something is wrong. Now it's your task, and hopefully with the help of your doctors and friends and family, to figure out what your migraine is warning you about. I mean, for me, it's just when I have migraine now, I can really almost always trace it back to something that I did wrong. And for example, I bought a new iron cast pan because I have iron levels that are low, and everybody told me I should bring those up, and I can just cook in an iron cast pan. I cooked with it, half an hour later every time. I had the strongest migraine. Turns out free iron is completely toxic, especially because the free iron is like a bomb. So if you don't have enough bomb neutralizers around, it's very dangerous or can be very harmful, and it can trigger migraine. So my migraine was telling me, what are you doing? This is really hurting you. Stop it. So now when I get a migraine, I can always use it as a warning signal, and I look for the trigger. So I got a migraine every day for a month back, and I was like, well, this is so strange. It's not going away. What is happening? Turns out I had this new multivitamin supplement with great ingredients, but it also had free iron. And so just a bit of free iron was so, I figured that out and I stopped it. And that might sound crazy, but with a diary, your migraine is warning you from something. It could be hormone deficiency if you have menstrual migraine. It could be energy deficiency if you have migraine after exercise all the time, or if you need to change your diet, or maybe you have vitamin D deficiency. There's something that your migraine is telling you. And if you figure this out, there's absolutely hope that you get your brain back.
I love that so much. I cannot wait until my migraine becomes a better friend, because right now it's one of the worst friends I've ever had. But I cannot.
And in your case, it's probably telling you that with your concussion, right, there might have been something damaged in your brain, and it's suffering from something, right, because it was triggered by the concussion, right? So there's maybe something that now you have too many bombs around, and we need to figure out a way to catch those bombs or get more bomb neutralizers there, or fix, maybe your brain is running out of energy, and it's running out of energy every day. So of course it doesn't feel like a friend, right? Because it's all the time, and it's hard to figure out a warning signal if it's every day. When I was chronic, it was impossible, right? Because how? But there is hope, and that you're sitting there smiling. That's one thing I admire so much about most migraine patients, is that they carry this with so much grace. And I mean, they're fighting. So it's so admirable, and so few people acknowledge or can even imagine what somebody with chronic migraine is going through every day, and still doing all the things that you're doing. You can be so proud, and everyone out there who's still doing all this stuff, you can be so proud of yourself. It's really migraine warriors, and it's very few people have an idea of what you're achieving on a daily basis with chronic migraine. So you can definitely give yourself a pat on the shoulder, and everyone else, because it's really, I don't even know how you do it anymore now without it, right? I have no idea how it can be done. You sitting there smiling and doing all the things you do, it's really great.
Exactly. And you can say that like once you're out, but when you were in it, we didn't really have any options. So I just want everyone out there who is still in the thick of it to know you're not alone. You have so much support here. There are options. We just have to keep hoping. We just have to keep learning. We have to fund research. I mean, us personally, I don't know how much research I could fund, but we need to advocate to get more research so that we can have more projects like what Dr. Elena Gross is working on. We need to tune in and support all of these doctors and researchers to make sure that we get the support that we need. And again, watch all of these interviews from the Migraine World Summit, because these experts are taking time out of their day because they care so deeply, and they want patients like us to actually understand and get all of the information that a lot of us won't ever get from our doctors because they're not headache specialists or not specialized in migraine. There's just so much to do, and everyone has different takes. So if one thing doesn't work for you, and even if it feels like you've tried everything, we still have options. There's so much research happening. We are going to get through this.
Together, yes. And we're going to be louder and louder so that finally this topic gets the attention and the research funding and funding in general that it deserves.
Exactly.
There's a billion of us. This should have billions of funding as well, right? So
Yeah.
I think together we can be louder and make sure that this gets the attention it deserves. And thank you everyone for taking time of your day and listening in. If you have more questions, you know where to find me. I also have a website actually that where you get a free white paper. It's Dr. Elena, ELENA, GROSS.com. And there you can just download the free white paper that describes the pillars, the 4 pillars, and what you can do in each individual one, and how you can test if migraine, if energy metabolism is a part of your root cause for your migraine.
And
so
her full interview starting on day 3 of the Migraine World Summit, which is March 8th, 2024. It'll start at 3 p.m. Eastern, and it'll be available regardless of your time zone for 24 hours. So make sure you get there. Feel free to comment on it. Feel free to take notes, do everything. And thank you so much, Dr. Gross. This is so helpful. I'm so excited to see where this goes and how this research progresses. And thank you so much for caring so deeply about patients.
Thank you, Kelly. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you again. You're a radiation of sun and warmth and light, really, like a torch,
I feel
migraine torch.
for you. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for tuning in. Bye-bye.